Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about how to unify the world and about making it about the paradigm shift that's happening in the world. There's in the third dimension, this paradigm shift is we're going from the third dimension to the fourth dimension. And the third dimension is based on illusion. So we're going to break out of the illusion now, out of the fight, out of the battles that are occurring. The battle for supremacy, the battle to get to the top office, the battles that are occurring that are separating people and creating a sense of division. When you come up with a plan, basically you come up with an overview idea and then it splits off into two different ideas. If you have a new invention, for example, the classic story has to do with, like a plot for a movie, has to do with come up with a new invention, and then it separates off into two ideas, technology and then conflict resolution. It's actually solving a problem and then coming up with a plan, but then it shifts to, let's say, the classic story, the plot of a little science fiction story where they come up with a talking robot, and the government wants to either destroy it or take it over and use it for weapons. So it goes into the idea of, is it going to be helpful or is it going to be a weapon? It creates a sense of duality. So what we want to do is to let go of the idea of duality and start thinking about how to unify it. Our plan for the religions have been dividing everybody for a long time. Ours is the chosen one, or whatever. And when in fact the idea of after the duality is over and we start to create this paradigm shift, religion becomes a unifying process. So right now, the two biggest things that are causing problems, in the United States at least, is the battle over vaccines and the battle over abortion. Okay, so what I'd like to do today is to kind of go through this paradigm shift and make this shift to make them obsolete. Okay, so vaccines were created a long time ago, and with the idea of smallpox and coming up with a solution for that, and basically that's basically the thing of choice. But is that the way? Do people have to die before the vaccine is created? You know, back when it was, you take somebody who's cured for it, or you put it in the person's skin, and then they create antibodies against it, and then they have this. That was one idea. But now what's happening is with science, they're able to take and find what the genetic structure is, and then come up with some sort of a key that fits in there that blocks that transmission idea. Okay, so it's different, but it's still the same. It's coming up with something, and people dying before they can come up with an idea. When we make this paradigm shift, people are not going to be dying. Okay, and the same thing with abortion. People have been in the past, before this argument over life, right to life and right to choice, and it's this division. So the same thing with abortion. Is it possible to have an abortion without it being a legal issue? Yeah, it is. I mean, it is possible. So now the good news is, the bad news is that the people who rely on the existing structure put up a problem with it, put up a resistance to it, and the people who are making the paradigm shift go first. Like I said, the good news, though, is that you're responsible for your own actions, and the bad news is you're responsible for your own actions. Okay, now, this is going to sound really kind of counterintuitive for a minute, and I want to explain. The spirit, the entire, to this point in time, all the spiritual books that have been written, the focus of all the spiritual books, including the Bible, say what you believe is what is. It's the spiritual truth. What you believe is what is. Now, the people who are more focused on the material world, they already know that. It's kind of like logic to them. For the rest of us, the spiritual people, it's kind of like, okay, we have to work on what we believe. We have to work on what we believe. Well, the other people, the material people, are just going ahead and creating their lives anyway. Then they get into trouble because it's not creating the life they really want. Let's say you're 19 years old and you've graduated from high school, and now you're going out and you're trying to figure out how you're going to fit into the working world, how you're going to make enough money. Are you going to go to college? Are you going to get a job? Are you going to do this? Are you going to take over the family business someday and you're working in it? What are you going to do? Are you going to go into the military first, and then you're going to get some training underneath your belt that allow you to feel like you can work into it? Okay, what exactly? See, it's like the materially focused people already have an idea. The only problem with it is that's not necessarily their life. So people go along for a period of time being material and then switch over to being spiritual. From the standpoint of understanding one and the other are kind of like dependent on each other for what they're doing. So in other words, one can be a little bit spiritual and a lot material, or one can be a little bit material and a lot spiritual. And they kind of work together like that. So together we create a kind of sense of unity, the family of man, and we're all in this together, but we're all just coming at it from different ideas. Okay, now when we have what we believe is what is, and the good news is, so going back to that idea, is that we're in the illusion. We're trying to figure out how to make it happen. We're evolving along a belief structure. We start out, parroting our family teachings, and then someday you come to the point where you say, I don't necessarily believe that anymore. I'm experiencing different things. Okay, now I'm getting way off here, but that had to be something that was addressed first. Vaccines. What happens if you're responsible for what you believe and you can just not be sick anymore? What happens if you understand, like if we put these two ideas together, and what happens if what you believe is what is, and then you work to change what you believe, and then you can go forward and create your life? What happens? See, this is how I've had to function for a long time, because for many years I never had any health insurance. I had to, if I had a problem, I'm responsible for figuring out what it is and then changing it. When the pandemic started, I was going, okay, how does this work? And then I asked and seeked and knocked, and I started to do some research, and from what I had from the spiritual hierarchy, from our prayer circles and such, and from asking questions and such, I was able to extrapolate enough information about what people believe to create this pandemic. Now, so then we had this separation. We had the schism that's been tearing apart the planet into 4 groups. We've had the people who stand on the principles, they're all science. Okay, we have to wear masks, we have to social distance, we have to wait for the vaccine, we have to put people in hospitals and on ventilators but they couldn't figure out how to stop people from dying because doctors can't help people get their lives. What happens if you are in a nursing home? What happens if the virus comes from people equating ideas of people and snakes, and the different ideas about people and snakes have come to different strains. Let's say in Wuhan, it is the Wuhan virus came about because of the Trump trade war. And I'm not accusing anybody, because Donald Trump thought the trade war was a great idea, and a lot of people did. The economic people who looked at that and said, we cannot keep outsourcing our stuff. We need to bring everything back. We have to make it pay. And so we had the people of principles and the people who power and money, and everybody had a different focus. Just like the spiritual people and the material people, we have the people who stand on principles and the people who stand on power and money. And then there are people whose lives are affected, and those are the people who's just like people in nursing homes. And all of a sudden, what happens if their problem is not the trade war, but what happens if their problem has to do with the food down at the cafeteria? The food that they're getting, they're cutting services and increasing the prices, and they're going to be their home. They're going to have to move out because they can't afford to stay in it anymore. Okay, so we have all these different ideas about snakes and people who are snakes. Okay, we had, how about in the Chinese, the Wuhan strain comes to America, but we're not dealing with the same problem. So here the spike goes way up. There in Wuhan, it's because of the trade war and Trump is the snake. Here we don't understand it, but we're getting the virus. The pandemic is here, and all of a sudden we're going, we can't wear masks. We can't do that because it's not going to solve the problem. So how do you solve this problem of the pandemic? If vaccines are obsolete, what do you have to do is you have to unravel what you believe in your mind, and you have to separate this out. We're looking at the sociological structure, the triggering factor that's causing this crisis. Then we're back to the idea of crisis in the family and coming up with a plan. On the opposite side of the planning circle, say you have a crisis down here in the family. In the planning circle, you have the plan, and then bringing in the people, bringing in the support, then dealing with crisis in the family. But you can start with the crisis in the family. It's like the world is turned upside down. The people who are focused on this, then you have to come up with somebody with a plan. Now, that may not make sense to you, but say the planning process, you start and you go around the planning circle. And then you have to deal with security issues and capacity issues, and then tolerance and this. So we're going to look at this idea of a crisis in the family starts out and then coming up with a plan. But then as it goes around the planning circle, actually from your perspective it goes this way, what happens is you come up with a sense of duality again. If your plan, you have people who are resistant to the plan, or you have people who are going along with the plan and think it's a great idea, but then you have to bring in the people, and you're let's say I'm introducing a way to overcome the vaccine. We don't need vaccines anymore, but it's like a crutch that people have been relying on for a while until we can change what we believe. So what we have to do is we have to recognize the vaccines as a crutch that will help people temporarily, but it's not the answer. So if we come up with the vaccines only, and we're looking at that doesn't solve the sociological idea that is triggering this whole idea, equating people and snakes. That's just kind of like a thing that's supposed to stop it for a little while. Okay, so let's say, how do you do that? Is you recognize the idea that we go back to universal law and how God looks at things. What would Jesus do is something that people have talked about for a long time. So what we're looking at now is this idea of what would God do? God has to stand on the principles of universal law. And I've talked about that before, based on this idea about my trusty old card. What would God do? This is the principles of universal law. So you come up with a plan. You come up with let's say you have a group of people who function for their own interests, and they are going to invest in the vaccines. This is my chance to make a lot of money. Okay? I'm playing the game of greed. I'm going to make a lot of money off this vaccine. We don't want to stop wars. We don't want to bring world peace because I make a lot of money by manufacturing arms. Okay, I'm talking about that group of people. That group of people, let's say we have the first group of people who basically are coming up with a new idea, and then the resistance to it from the people who want money. And then the third group of people are the people who come up with, say, they function for their own interests. We're going to hold this to the old structure. We see this a lot in movies, let's say, where the movie Miracle on 34th Street, the Christmas movie, where the Santa Claus is there. It's Nicholas, and he wants to do this, but the old structure is coming up within the resistance, who doesn't like Santa Claus. No, we have to make money to do this. And then now it becomes kind of like a plan where we're going to use this idea and we're going to make a lot of money by doing this. But then there's this resistance to this idea. There's the spiritual idea of Christmas where everybody, it's the not necessarily the spiritual idea of Christmas, but let's say, and then there's the people who are making money, but then there are the people who function for their own interests who are going to put Santa Claus in prison. Okay? That's just something that kind of stuck in my mind for a minute because so many people have seen that movie. Okay, so we're looking at these ideas, and we're going to take advantage of this idea. We're going to listen to this idea. It solves a problem, but does it actually address the root cause of the problem? So we're looking at now is to unravel the root cause of this problem. And as we make this paradigm shift, more and more people are going to be going this way, and it's going to kind of drag people out behind you, and the people who are trying to stop it are going to be the last people in line to come in. It's going to be like a movement that is going to draw people forward and around this corner. Okay, so if we're looking at a way to create the sense of unity, the people who are trying to create division over here are the last people to come in. Okay, so how about abortions? So anyway, before I go on to this, what would happen if God walks like a straight and narrow idea? You have to walk the straight and narrow idea. That's not the perfect example of that. But let's say that when people, they say that God creates a sense of balance, God creates a sense of unity, that's because God stands on these 7 principles. The universal law stands on these 7 principles. Okay, it's equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, capacity, abundance, tolerance, and then it goes around and around and around. Now, when people are making waves like this, they're saying, I'm functioning for my own interests. All right. Now, how about vaccines and abortions? Okay, as I said, the vaccine idea, the unity idea, is that God never said there had to be any money associated with healing anything. Jesus didn't take money. Jesus didn't require any kind of money associated with anything. Like healing cancer, do you have to pay billions of dollars for a cancer treatment center? You know, that all of these ideas where medicine takes money are going to eventually be obsolete. But that's when people are creating their life. I'm talking about right now, we're going from the 3rd dimension to the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension. So let's say that it doesn't cost, in heaven, doesn't cost any money to do anything. You just share your talents and gifts with other people. So we're creating a network of people where everybody is willing to share their talents and gifts to help other people create their life. And based on universal law, they're saying, to get help, I need to help other people get to their life. For me to get out of my crisis, I have to help other people get out of their crisis. And your crisis is like you're going along for a period of time, believing one thing, and then it stops working. You believe, okay, I believe in vaccines. I believe in science. I'm a scientific person. I was a dental hygienist. I took med school classes to get there, to become a dental hygienist. Dental school classes and med school classes a lot of times came together. So basically I was studying right along with the dentists and the med school students, maybe an abbreviated course of it, but we had studied the same thing. So go along the scientific viewpoint. How about religion? How about, okay, I believe in the one true religion. Okay, but what happens if God is all-encompassing on this whole thing? What happens if God is the whole universe, and we're talking about universal law with the aliens? And we have a perceived idea by watching movies about aliens. Okay, this is a very big subject we're talking about. We're talking about universal law and how it affects the whole thing. So do aliens need money? Okay, see, this is a very big subject. Okay, now, universal law, as I said, stands on these 7 principles. And so it doesn't require money, it requires these 7 principles. Okay, now, so equality. So from the father, mother, son idea, the father idea is the principles of it. Okay, the 7 principles that we're looking at are these principles. Equality. Okay, so right now we have the industrialized, the big nations and big wealthy nations who have basically bankrupted themselves coming up with vaccines so that they can send it out to the people so that the economy can not become stagnant, stay flowing. We need to keep it an economic flow. Okay, equality, liberty, our rights. Is it our right to not wear masks? Okay, what happens if masks are a crutch for a period of time? And that allows us to keep us from, how about when we wear a mask, we're thinking about what we're saying. We're going to spew out the idea of those scoundrels, those snakes. How about we kind of like put a button on it, you know, let's cover up our mouths and say, instead of letting our spew come out about how much we hate those dirty, rotten scoundrels who are snakes, we're going to figure out how we ourselves can be safe from the dirty, rotten scoundrels. Because that's why people die. When they think the dirty, rotten scoundrels, the snakes of the world, are interfering in their life. How about the people in Wuhan, China, and the trade war? That dirty, rotten scoundrel has his trade war against us is interfering in our lives. Okay? See what I mean? We're going to, maybe we can think of masks as being a way to button our mouths up so we don't spread that spew to other people. And we're going to take all of that and put it back into ourselves and say, we're responsible for what we're saying. We're responsible for what we believe. We're responsible for what we share with other people. And now what we have to do is, let's say it's like reflecting back to us. All of our spew, all of our anger is going to come back to us and put the responsibility right on our shoulders. Okay? So let's think of masks as being a way to reflect it back. Our freedom. Freedom. What happens if we don't wear masks and we're saying, dirty, rotten, okay, the Republicans, those dirty, rotten Democrats are interfering with our economy. We can't shut down the economy. So our our liberties are being interfered with. All right, but they're not. Okay, so let's say they're coming up with a plan. Come up with a better plan that protects your rights. Okay, that's our rights are to create the life we want. But God said those scoundrels, those dirty, rotten scoundrels, don't have to affect us. All right, so now we're talking about our freedom. Are we free? Is that a matter of freedom, like freedom of speech and freedom of the press? What are the freedoms? The freedom is massacres. The principle of freedom stops massacres. Massacres is based on greed. Okay, what happens if you're saying we have the right to be greedy, our freedom to extort people? Now that's kind of a lame excuse, but I'm talking about, how about freedom of the press? The press is designed to be accountable, to hold our elected officials accountable, to make sure that the truth is coming out and not illusion. So if somebody says to me, okay, if a liar is sitting there saying that's fake news, then you don't know what the truth is. When you tell the big lie, the grand lie, the truth doesn't overcome the lie. And that's why things are as bad as they are, is because so anybody who's standing up and talking about freedom, they should be upholding the press and holding them accountable for having all the facts. And if they don't, then they have to print a retraction. That's where freedom of the press, freedom of assembly is. We don't have the right, the government doesn't have the right to take away our right to assembly. The Constitution, they cannot take away our rights and our freedoms. Okay? All right. So freedom to wear a mask and to spew your ideas out, or to not wear a mask and to spew your ideas and overturn the government, that's not freedom. Freedom is when you stand up and you demand that they tell the truth and not put a spin on it, and let's get the facts. All right. So then compassion, that goes against victimization. Okay, this is an interesting idea because it has to do with slavery. Okay, the idea of compassion and slavery. Okay, what happens if Donald Trump is telling lies? He's been caught in many lies. He's spinning the truth. He's talking about fake news. He's talking about rebellion and overturning elections. He's talking about all insurrection and bringing people together to do that. Okay, so now what he's doing by weaving an illusion, he's bringing a group of people together around him with the idea that they are going to help him overturn an election and make him president again. Okay. Now, victimization. So people who feel they've been victimized, basically, here we are. Where is this misunderstanding here that allows that? Where does that go? What happens if those people are actually slaves? That Donald Trump is playing the game of lust, the game of revenge, and it's the game of lust. He said, okay, how about if Donald Trump is playing the same game that the man behind ISIS is playing, and he's weaving an illusion and telling everybody that, okay, we're going to help you get the same, let's draw a parallel between the man behind ISIS and the man behind the insurrection. You're going to put me into power. That's what it is it's to put one man into power. Okay, to give that man the power that the government, that the Constitution doesn't give him. All right, so I'm going to tell you that if we're talking about compassion, okay, the lack of compassion is doing that. Okay, so I'm going to, for just a minute, I'm going to refer you back to the videos on revenge. There are 5 games associated with revenge, and we know that Donald Trump is getting revenge on the Bidens, the Clintons, and the Obama President Obama. Okay, he's the revenge idea is what's causing problems. But there's five groups of people who are associated with revenge. One plays the game of war, one genocide, one massacres, one slavery, and one voters denying people the votes. That's anger. Okay, so we have voter suppression. Whenever there's voter suppression, that's denying people a voice in their government. So what we're doing, we have to get rid of all these power games that are associated with lack of power. We have to turn around, and we're looking at Donald Trump, recognizing the games. We're unraveling all this illusion. This is how you unravel the illusion. Okay, because God never said it had to. Abundance and capacity have to do with famine, and that has to do with poverty, abundance, lack, and poverty. Okay, so poverty, okay, we're making all this stuff up. We're shifting the wealth to the people who have the money and they can control everything, like gerrymandering, and we're going to get all the votes and we're going to shift the money more towards the wealthy people. Okay, and the last thing is when they deny people a voice. So when voter suppression is coming about, we know that terrorism is the next step. So they're talking about the end of the democracy, but they're talking about the end. These cycles, 3 cycles, have reached the point where terrorism is starting up again, and the idea of the anger associated at our government. Okay, so denying people a voice makes people lash out and in anger, and if they don't get their voice, that's when they start destroying things. Okay, so how do we solve this problem? So we have 3 choices now. We're at this point of the third cycle. George W. Bush was the first one with the Iraq War. He started these cycles, the preemptive strike on Iraq. The second one was Obama. President Obama couldn't overcome the effects of the Republicans. He couldn't figure out how to do it. He had a plan, but then he had a lot of resistance to the plan. Now the third one is Donald Trump, and he went like this: Donald Trump is over. So what is Joe Biden going to do? What is Joe Biden? Is he going to go straight ahead and down? If his plans are based on the old structure like vaccines, we go down. If we choose to go straight down, we go down into the games. So let's say this. We have 3 potential futures. Down into the games like Donald Trump creating the insurrection. Straight ahead with Joe Biden, vaccines, and his plans don't address the root cause of the problem. The third one is where we start making this paradigm shift. We have this movement. We're making the paradigm shift where we are standing up and we are demanding our government start to make this paradigm shift that functions for everybody. All right, let's look at Congress for a minute. Okay, so let's say they come up, they just spent $2-3 trillion, borrowed money, $2-3 trillion for the pandemic. Yep, they solved the problem, but they didn't solve the problem because now there's booster shots and the economy's going down and people are worried about having a famine. People are angry, and so the earth is actually getting hotter, it seems like, and there's people who are greedy and they're going to do undersea mining and they're going to make the Clipperton Clarion zone hotter, which makes more fires in California. Okay, all these things we'll talk about later, okay? So that's the application of this. Okay, then, you see, we have to start to create this universal law idea. And then God already solved this problem for us. We just have to start to change what we believe. We have to bring people together, the material people and the spiritual people. The people who are looking at this, unraveling this, can come together with the people who have the drive to go ahead. We're going to give them the plans and we're going to work with them And okay, so let's say we have two groups of people, the spiritual people and the material people. Okay, well, this is my left side and this is my right side. So the spiritual people are going to be introducing ideas like the root cause of problems. The material people are going to move forward to the point of implementing those ideas. But then what they'll do is they'll kind of spread that idea out and they'll go forward. But then they'll go to a certain point where they can't go any further. And then they're going to work with the spiritual people who are going to take it forward again. And it's going to be like this. Okay? The whole world, as we get this idea, like my videos are going to work to help one go forward and then the other go forward. Okay? And that's covered in the first book of the Power Series books. It's a game that we're looking at. Are we going to play the game of revenge, or are we going to go like this? Are the material people who are saying, we have our rights, we have our rights, we have a right not to wear our mask, we have a right to listen to Donald Trump, we have a right to do this. Okay, so let's make, I'm going to refer you back to not to Donald Trump, but to our American Revolution. The first people to come into the American Revolution who saw the need to stand up were the people like John Adams, not Thomas Jefferson. He didn't come in. He didn't understand what was going on. He was into money, or he was standing on the rights, but he didn't recognize it right away. That's why Adams and Jefferson were always fighting with each other, because one had the principles, but the other person had the power. So they kind of worked together like this, but they were always fighting. And the fighting was great, because what they did was they understood, one understood the principles, and one was, let's say, the application of the principles that went forward. So John Adams was always angry at everybody for not listening to what he had to say. He was always so upset. But what he did was he dragged everybody up and talked about the principles. And then he was so frustrated with the people who applied the principles by writing that. And you listen to me because you're not paying attention to the principles. Okay, John, we understand what you're saying. We didn't see it at first, but we now recognize what it is. So I have a feeling what's going to happen is the Democrats are going to start really listening to what these principles are, as people starting to make this. Their government is people. Okay, so they're people, and they have to make the paradigm shift also, because they can't solve problems. If they're not solving problems, at some time they have to start listening. And that was what Barack Obama's greatest achievement was that when he had a problem, he turned it over to the people who had the power. He had the Board of Economic Supervisors. We're going to turn it over to you. You start to figure out this idea, but I'm going to go to the people, and I'm going to start working with the people, which is what he did the best, and then start looking for answers. And then that's what made him open to listening to the people. And what he didn't realize that, first of all, then he found the corporations and the people who had a lot of corporate power and things like that, and they would talk to him, but they would spout off the same things. They hadn't gone through this idea of universal law, equality. They hadn't made the paradigm shift yet. But then the paradigm shift came when the plan for world peace came around, and it went around through an end run, and that's what we're doing now, is we're doing end runs. Okay? So the plan for the international government was sent to the ambassadors in Washington, D.C. They got together, talked about it. They go to parties all the time. They know each other. They go to golf tournaments. They go to parties. And they talk. What do they talk about? They talk about ideas, don't they? Okay, how's your kids? That only lasts so long. When they talk about the ideas, new ideas that are coming out. Did you hear about this? Then they spread the idea out. Then what happens is you put somebody in who's resisting the idea. I don't like that idea. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's a great idea. So the third world countries like the plan of being equal to everybody else, and the industrialist countries were saying, we don't like this idea because our power is going to go down if we're equal to everybody else. Okay, all right. So what about the idea of states? Okay, so our founding fathers already solved the problem about that. They made all the states equal, and they gave everybody our rights. They created a sense of equality. They created a sense of rights. This is the House of Representatives. This is the Senate. They put us on the track to creating a sense of balance. Okay, so abortions don't need to cost any money. By doing it this way, you can say, what I believe is what is. I have a blueprint in my heart for my purpose, to fulfill my purpose in life. Everybody does. That's equality. Everybody has a blueprint in their heart to create the life they want. That's fulfilling our purpose in life. And having a baby at this point in time is just going to kick me way off course. I can't handle that. I can't deal with that. I'm trying to go to school. I'm trying to get my education. I can't have a baby now. So what happens is the woman has a miscarriage. Phew, it's gone. They don't need to have an abortion. And the need to have an abortion, the need to have an illegal abortion is not necessary. So all those laws, Roe v. Wade is obsolete. Roe v. Wade is great. It's been like a crutch. It's like this. It's like a mask that says, okay, I have a right. I have the rights. Okay, but you already had the rights, and nobody can take those rights away from you. So universal law now makes this paradigm shift possible, but it has to be for everybody. Any woman who doesn't want to have a child in her life at that time, can have a miscarriage, and nobody has to know. Nobody's going to turn you into the authorities for having a miscarriage. Nobody's going to come and sue you for doing it like they are in Texas. Just let it go. On the opposite direction, if you want to have a child and you're bleeding, then you better stop and think about, why do I really want this child in my life? Even though I know it's going to be hard. It's not going to be a Disney movie, basically, or maybe it will be like a Disney movie. It's going to be hard. So you have to make the decision, then the bleeding stops. You are responsible for your own lives now. So the responsibility is on your shoulder. Are you going to be the material person who's going to move ahead and say, okay, I've had traumatic events in my life. I've had this happen in my life. Now I have to dig myself out of the hole. Okay, where am I? What am I doing? And everything that makes the paradigm shift. I have the right to decide whether to have a miscarriage or not. Not abortion, a spontaneous abortion. Miscarriage is called a spontaneous abortion. Spontaneous abortion. Okay, what I believe is what is. Then the hell of it is you have to figure out what you believe, because you start to create your life step by step to come out to create your life. There's a better way to do it too. One that we're going to do is the Getting Out of the Abyss series, and we'll talk about that later when my people demonstrate how to do it. Okay, the people who are basically helping me come, I have to help them get out of the abyss by proving it in my own life. All right, then the other thing is vaccines. Do you need a vaccine? Can you stop thinking about snakes, equating people and snakes? Are you ready to have a vaccine? If you've had the vaccine, you're still responsible because there's different variations that are coming out, variants that are coming out. There's even a new one now after Delta. That's the Mu one. And basically that one is coming out of, I can't remember where, Colombia. It's coming out of Colombia. So now it's like, it's devolving and pulling us down. The snakes are pulling us down into hell, basically. But hell is, you can get out of hell. Archangel Michael told us the difference between heaven and hell is that in heaven there's a solution to your problems. Oh, that's great. You're no longer in hell, you're in heaven. The difference is that in heaven is a continuum of frequency, and if you want to, if you're at the very bottom of hell, you got to work your way all the way up, and you keep on going and going and going and going and going. That's the idea of the rainbow. And my books are channeled messages from God on how to overcome any crisis. So basically, we are back in the time of Noah now, and the rainbow, and the application of the Noah's rainbow is that all the hell that Noah and his family went through when they were building the ark and everything. You know this story. Read about it in the Bible, you know. Read about it on the internet. Find out what Noah did and how he was able to take that idea and the promise from God and the rainbow and start to create his life. So the rainbow is not just a promise. It's the, if you're in crisis, the rainbow is also the planning process that helps you get out of the crisis. So if you know the root cause of the problem, and with the planning process, you can solve your problems. So that's where we are right now, is we're going to be addressing the root cause of problems, and we're starting to unravel all this misunderstanding, and we're going to start carrying people right around the corner here, going this way, working together, going this way, and then this way, and then this way, and then this way, and this way. Okay, step by step. One works. Okay, see what I mean? Okay, so we're going to do the paradigm shift by changing this idea that we don't have to have abortions. We don't have to have expensive vaccines. Now what we have to do is we have to, for all those Republicans who are focused on money, how about we start to demonstrate how to create a sense of abundance in the world? Okay, how do we create the principles of the cooperation of nature? Okay, nature is not dog eat dog. Nature is principles of cooperation. So how do we cooperate? We come up with an idea, we share it with other people, and those people carry the idea forward, and then they draw, as they go forward, they draw you up, because you also have to come up with a plan. Together you come up with a plan, you work together, and then you take it forward because you're working with the planning process, and then they go forward too. So it's like both climbing the ladder, helping the other person up. Oh, how about a ladder? How about climbing a cliff and your rope is only a certain length? It doesn't go all the way to the top, so you have one person pulling the other person up. The other person is resting while the other person climbs. Oh, wow. Cool. Anyway, welcome to the paradigm shift. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.